All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar Interview and Tips 101. I'm Amber Hamilton. I am with the Student Life office, and also here with us this afternoon is Jenna Welch. She's also at the Student Life office, and Taylor Bingham, our coordinator of Career and Employment Services. So we are coming at you today with one of our webinars that I think is going to be really good. Excellent tips, interviewing 101. And as I was saying, it doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. If you're currently employed right now, if you're looking for a job right now, these are going to be some good tips for you to carry with you always. We are going to record this webinar for you, and that way if you want to come back later and watch it, you can. If you know somebody who's not able to join us and they want to be able to view it later, it'll be that option will be open to them. So it'll be posted on our social media pages and on our websites. So we want you to ask some questions. Taylor has a really good presentation that she's going to go through. So if you'll there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to type in your questions there. We're going to keep track of those questions. And at the end of the presentation, we'll come back on and ask those on your behalf. So just as you think of them, type them in there. And in the end, we will get to all the questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Taylor Bingham. Taylor, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Amber. I so appreciate the introduction. So like she said, I am the coordinator of Amarillo College's Career and Employment Services. So some of the things that we offer in Career and Employment Services are resume critiques, cover letter critiques. We have job fairs that we host. We also do mock interviews and different services like career guidance just to help you find the career field that is best for you. So what we're going to be talking about today again is interviewing 101. So what we're going to be talking about is just interviewing basics. We're going to be talking about navigating the process of the interview, and then we're going to go through some final tips for the interview. Like Amber said, anytime you have questions, please put them in that Q&A box. We would love to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. So any questions you have, type them in and I will answer them the best that I absolutely can. So let's go ahead. Before we go into interviewing basics, let's talk about where we are in the job obtainment process. So at this point, right, and we're talking about interviewing, we have already found a job, right? We've already job searched, we found the job, we've submitted our application and with our resume and our cover letter, and we've made it through to a hiring manager. That they were like, okay, yes, that seems like a quality candidate, and now you can give them a call or shoot them an email to offer them the interview. That's our preliminary contact, our professionalism, where the employer would be probably looking us up online or would giving us a phone call to offer that interview. That brings us now to step 4, where we are, which is what we'll talk about today, interviewing. So after that, then ideally we'd have our job offer and then our negotiation where we'd accept or reject the offer. So we're going to talk about interviewing today. So let's start with the interviewing basics. So we know when we go into an interview, right, that they're going to ask us questions. That's kind of the point, right, of the interview, is that they're going to ask questions. We'll most likely be like in a conference room or in an office, something like that, right, where you either have one person or maybe a panel with a few people asking us questions. So the first kind of step is we need to know how to answer the questions. So the first thing that I like to suggest is to frame the answer. So the way that we frame the answer is we repeat the question, we answer, and then we repeat the question again. And that is ensuring that we are answering the question. And so what this can sound like is, say the interviewer asks you, tell me about a time that you had to resolve a conflict with a coworker. So your answer could sound like, a time that I had to resolve a conflict with a coworker was when, ... you'd fill in your time here, your situation, ... and that was a time that I resolved a conflict with a coworker, period. What this technique can do for you and how it can help is that it helps to keep you from rambling, and it helps to really make sure you answer the question. It also can help you elaborate. So say you're one of those people that just kind of answer it and you're done, right? You might be answering quickly just to be done with the answer. This can help you elaborate a little bit more to make sure that you're giving the fullest answer that you can. For those of you that might be like me and like to ramble and give lots and lots of details, and then it's like, okay, wait, where was I? This can help wrap you up. And that can also make sure that you are answering the question, right? That's one of the biggest interviewing do nots, is just we don't want to not answer the question. There's a lot of negatives in that sentence, right? So we want to make sure that whatever they ask, we're giving it to them clearly, succinctly, and it's all in a pretty little package with a bow on it. A lot of times I get the question of, how do I end the answer? And I'll hear people say, so yeah, that's it, right? I usually hear some of those vocal fillers, or they're kind of like trailing off with their answer. And this technique of framing the answer helps eliminate that, because you've repeated the question. And so that was a time I resolved a conflict with a coworker. Done. The interviewer knows that you're done, and you know that you're done. So there's not a question of like, are they going to keep talking? Are they going to not keep talking? What's happening here? It is the aspect that they know you're done, and it's a confident way to end the answer. So we make sure we're framing our answers in every single question that we get, to make sure that we're answering it and that we are clear, concise, and to the point. So now another part of interview basics are the different types of interview questions. So there's multiple different types of questions. So let's go through these one by one. So the first type of interview questions would be common interview questions. And some common interview questions could be, tell me about yourself. What are some of your strengths and weaknesses? Why did you leave your last job position? What are some of your goals? Right? So these are some common interview questions that they might ask you, right? They may not, but they might. And these are things that you can already have answers ready and prepped to go. You can discuss these with a career coach, with somebody who can help you, where you have a formulated answer that's ready. And you have examples, you've got things prepared and in your pocket. So if they ask you, hey, tell me about yourself, you've got an answer ready to go. Or at least something, if they say, tell me about yourself in a way, you know how to describe that. Having answers ready to these also eliminates that awkward pause of thinking, where it's like, let me think for a second. Let me think about the reason why, so that way it's clear and I'm not saying anything bad, right? If we prep these types of questions, we've already got some ammunition in our pocket ready to go and ready to fire to answer that question. Awesome. So common interview questions. And again, I think we said this off the recording, but on our website we have an interview cheat sheet on actx.edu/career. And on that website, you can click the interview cheat sheet tips button, and it gives you tons of tips and also common interview questions that you can prep for. The next type of questions are task or knowledge questions. And so these types of questions will depend on your field and what you're going into, right? So that could be into computers or engineering or business management or welding or nursing, any type of those things. It has to deal with your field. What employers want to know here is if you know your stuff, right? So my suggestion for these types of questions is go look at the job description and go through that job description and highlight the very concrete things they're going to be having you to do, they're going to have you do, right? And highlight everything you're like, yeah, I know how to do that. I know how to do that, right? And ask yourself, where did I learn how to do this? How do I do this? If I were to describe this process, what would that look like, right? So that way, when they say, hey, do you know how to do X? And you can say, yes, the process of this would be right? Or if they could say, explain to me the process of this, you could then say the process of this is X, Y, or Z, depending on your field, right? But the big key here is going to be going through that job description and asking yourself, what concrete things am I going to need to do, or what might I need to explain that I can do? So they're task or knowledge questions, and these are the few questions that have kind of a right or a wrong answer. If you don't know your stuff, they might be like, you don't know what you would actually do here. So make sure that you know the job description and you know what you can do and you know your processes that you would have learned here at Amarillo College. Go Badgers, yay. Okay, so the next type of question are behavioral questions. And so behavioral questions, an interviewer wants to know how you behave and what you would do in a specific situation, right? So these aren't hypothetical. These are an exact example of what you've done in the past. These questions sound like, tell me about a time when, ... give me a situation when, ... right? And then if we're framing the answer, we would say back, a situation when this happened to me would be when, right? And we would continue on with our answer. There's an excellent way to handle these questions, and it's called the STAR method. And that is situation, task, articulation, and then result, I think is what it is, right? So STAR, that's what we want to make sure that we are going through. So we want to first describe the situation, what was going on, what was your task, we want to articulate what we did, and then we want to make sure that we are super clear on what the result was. So STAR, we want to make sure that we're going through this for every single time we have a situation question, focusing on the result. So if we're giving a situation, we're talking about our task, we're talking about what we did in this, we want to make sure we're talking about the result. What happened? How did this turn out? That's what the employer wants to know. They want to know how you behaved or what happened in this situation. If you check out again on our website, there's some great videos that talk about this STAR situation and how to use it to where it sounds fantastic in an interview. The next type of question are off-the-wall questions. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Intern with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, where Google asks, like, if you were in a blender, what would you do, right? Or you could say, how many ridges are on a quarter? Or I got one time in an interview, if you were an M&M color, what would you be and why? I was thrown, right? Those are weird off-the-wall questions. What employers want to know here, there's no right, there's no wrong answer. They want to see if you can think on your feet. And they're looking to also see if you can think on your feet, and they're also kind of getting a glimpse into your personality, right? So an answer to what M&M color would you be? I think my answer was yellow because I like to make things happy and sunshiny, right? So if you get those off-the-wall questions, just being honest and trying to show your personality in those and also not rambling too much. We don't want to go on and on and on to describe what would happen. Right, so again, if we go back to that example from the intern, they turned like getting stuck into a blender into like this whole crazy experience. And the employers loved it, right? Probably a little long of an answer, but the employers loved it. And that's what matters. So these off-the-wall questions can be your chance to be creative and to shine if you get them. The last type of interview questions are illegal interview questions. And illegal interview questions have questions that have anything to do with outside of the job performance, your job conduct, or your job behavior. Or your performance, conduct, or attendance. Excuse me, I misspoke there. So illegal interview questions can be things about your race, your ethnicity, your age, your family, right? So if you have a spouse or children, those types of things could be illegal depending on how they ask it, right? Now, employer might be able to ask you about your attendance, right? So what could keep you from working outside the hours of 8 to 5? That would be a perfectly acceptable question because that has to do with job attendance, right? So your answer to that could be like, okay, I might have things outside of this position, but it would not hurt the position. Like I would be able to make it work, right? So we don't have to disclose anything about our family, about our health, any types of things like that are off the table, illegal. So if you're asked those, or if you have questions about that, let me know because those are not okay. Again, just remember, if it has to do with the performance of your job, your behavior on the job, and your attendance on the job, those are all game. Those are clear, they are not illegal. Those are perfectly great questions. Anything outside of that is not okay. So make sure that in that interview, you as the student going through it, you're focusing on that job position, which is why we so have to read it. And you'll hear me say that over and over and over. Read the job description, right? It's like your pamphlet, or it's like your key to make sure that you are ready for that interview. So that pretty much wraps up interview basics. So we talked about just how to answer the question, and then we talked about different types of questions. So I'd be like, okay, good info, but what if I have one coming up? What do I do, right? That's where we come into navigating the process. So we're gonna go into navigating the process for before the interview, during the interview, and after the interview. So let's start with before the interview. So before the interview, again, you'll hear me say this over and over and over, reread the job description. Know what position this is. I've been in interviews before where I've seen a person come in and they're just like, now what job is this for again? It's like, oh no, that's just, it's cringy and it's not okay. But it can happen, right? So, I mean, if you're applying for lots of different jobs and you have lots of different interviews, it can happen. And then it's an immediate remark to the employer that they're like, if they don't even know like what job this is for, it's not a good idea, right? So when you, even if you have lots of interviews, what's going on, know which one you're going into and know which job description this is for. And if you have that in your pocket, you're going to be, you'll be on the way to getting to where you need to go. So make sure you reread that job description. Research the company. Remember those common interview questions we talked about a second ago? One of those common interview questions is, what do you know about this company? If you haven't done any research, it might be like, I know they do this. Sure, right? And it's not as confident and it's not sure. But if you've researched and you know, you're like, oh, so some things that I've researched about the company are your values, your mission statement, and this is what I found out, right? And you can talk about that, and that's what I've researched about your company. Period. See, it sounds pretty, especially when we're framing that answer. So make sure whenever you're applying, right, Google the company. It's pretty easy. Google the company. If it's a little company, see what you can find, right? Go in, ask questions. But if it's a big company, they usually have a website with an about section. Go read that section, that about section. Read everything there. There's usually their mission statement, their values, what the culture of the company might be like. So go and research the company. Know what their services are, right? Knowing about the company will go a long way. Again, like I said, prepare answers to the most common interview questions. So that way you've got those in your pocket and ready to go. Prepare 5 success stories for behavioral questions. Remember we talked about behavioral and situation? They want a specific time. They don't want like, oh, if this were to happen to me. That's not what they want. They want something specific because they want to know how you behave. And say you might not have ever done it before. You might be like, well, I don't think I've ever done this. Give an example from your life, right? So a big one that I hear is, I'll say, tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker. And the interviewee will say, oh, I've never had a conflict with my coworker. I'm easy to get along with. Not exactly. Pretty much everybody's had a conflict with a coworker or with somebody in your lifetime, right? At some point. Say, well, I'm usually pretty easy to get along with coworkers, but I've had conflicts with other people, and this is what that looks like for me. Still, if you have one with a coworker, most people do. Do your best, right? Make sure that you can give a specific situation in that example the best that you can, and have 5 of them ready to go. That way, they say, give me an example of a time when you're not like, our eyes drift, we're thinking, we can't make good eye contact because our brains are trying to figure out an example. You've already got 5 ready to go, you'll be ready. And then if they ask for more, you can come up with them as they come. So at least 5, but hopefully more. List 10 questions about the job and about the company. When you're writing these questions, make sure that it's not a question you could find the answer on their website or on the job description. If you ask a question where you could have found the answer on your own, they're going to think you didn't do your research or you didn't read the job description, right? So make sure the questions you ask are great questions. Things like saying, oh, I researched about your company that this is what your mission and your values are. How does that play out in the culture of the company? Darn, if I was an employer and heard that question, I'd be excited, right? I'd be like, okay, they know what they're talking about. If you have a question about the job description that you couldn't find the answer anywhere, that's a good place to ask it. So say they didn't have the scheduling on there and you could be like, well, is this a night shift or a day shift? Especially for my nurses, you want to make sure that you know that's on there. Or if it's part-time, full-time, those are questions that are very much valid to ask if they're not listed on the job description. So 10 questions about the job or the company. Determine your salary needs based on your living expenses. So make sure that you know what your bottom line is. I've heard from 2 people before, just 2, that they were offered a job immediately, like on the spot, which I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. it's kind of rare for that to happen. Most employers say, thank you so much. We'll be back with you in the next week or two. Have a great day, that kind of thing. However, if you are in that weird random situation where they do offer you something on the spot, you need to know how much you need to live, right? You need to know how much it takes to feed your kids, how much it takes to feed yourself, how much your mortgage is, or your rent, or your electricity, your water. Determine your salary needs just in case, right? This is a just in case. Most of the time you'll get that offer later, ideally, right? But it can happen. I first heard it happen. I was very surprised, but it can. So if you already have this ready to go, if they offer you something way above that, you're like, oh, great, sure, let's go. If they offer you something way below that, you'll know that that's not enough for you to be able to live, right? So make sure you're determining those salary needs based on your living expenses. Next, get permission from your references to mention them. So at this point, you've already submitted your resume, your references, your cover letter, all of that stuff, right? They may have already called your references, they might not have yet. So make sure that you talk to your references, shoot them a quick text, an email, and just say, hey, do you mind if I mention you in my interview? Pretty simple stuff. And then lastly, before the interview, you make sure that your outfit is picked out, you know what you're gonna wear, it's cleaned and it's pressed and it's ready to go, right? It's hanging in your closet, away from your doggo, away from your cat, away from anything that could possibly mess it up, but it's ready to go. And you've already picked out your outfit. So when it comes to what to wear, right? We could kind of talk about this for a little bit. A good rule of thumb is to look at the company, right? What do people who work at the company wear there on a daily basis? If people who work there wear slacks and a button-up, that would be business casual, right? You'd want to dress business professional, right? You'd want to wear like the full suit. You'd want to look very professional. If you're a nurse and everybody wears scrubs on a daily basis, you might want to make sure you're at least business casual, making sure you wear slacks and a nice blouse or a nice top or something to that effect. Say that you're one of our industry students and you're like, well, I'd be wearing work pants and boots every day. You probably don't want to wear a suit to that interview, right? You most likely could wear, jeans and a nice button up, or definitely like slacks and a button up would be a great bet to wear to an interview like that. So look at the company, look at your field. And one of my favorite things to suggest here is it brings in networking. Ask people you know that are already in this field. Hey, what did you wear to your interview? Was that appropriate in your head? And they were like, yeah, I just wore this and this. Thank you so much. Talk to other people. You're not alone in this. So ask questions and see what to wear. You can ask other professionals to see what's appropriate for your field. So now that was before, right? So a lot of before prep. You're like, might be like, whoa, Taylor, that's a lot. I get you, right? So before the interview, it's a lot of prep and a lot to get ready for. But by that point, we're at the day of. So what we do first is we just shower, we check our appearance, we make sure we look good, right? So if you don't do your makeup super often, if ladies, just make sure your makeup is appropriate, or gentlemen, make sure if you have like facial hair that it's cleaned up, but you're not like shaving and then trying to grow it out. We want to make sure that we are looking like ourselves. So we don't want to go too crazy, right? But we shower. Make sure you're clean, make sure your hair is done, it looks good. You wouldn't think I'd have to say shower, but I do. So make sure that you're showered and you're cleaned and you're ready to go. Put your phone on silent. I'm going to say this to you, sadly, from personal experience. I've had my phone go off in an interview before, and it was probably the most mortifying thing that's happened. Y'all, if you can help it, just leave your phone in your car. If you do need to call, a friend or someone for a ride when you're done, or if you have to figure out where the bus is, and you need to take your phone, turn it off, put it on silent, make sure it's off, turn all your alarms off. That was what happened to me. And my phone was on silent, my alarm went off. It's great, right? Make sure that your phone is on silent the day of the interview. What to bring? Bring your resumes, references, notepad, and a pen. People who carry a purse, don't come in with a big old honking purse on your shoulder, right? Make sure that you have your bare necessities, right? You might need your keys, you might need a bus pass or your ID. Those things you can easily fit into something called a padfolio. So I'm going to show you what a Padfolio can look like. You can get them at Office Max, Office Depot, online, Amazon. They look like this. It's just a professional folder, and you open it up, and it has a notepad, a little place for a pen. Sorry, it's black, it's hard to see. It has a place for that, and it also has like little card holders where you can put your ID, you can put your keys in the pocket, that kind of thing. They also have cute ones. I found one with polka dots on it recently. That was kind of fun. Just making sure it's professional and it can hold your resume, references, your notepad, and a pen, and then also keys, ID, things like that, to make sure that you're all together in one package. You don't have a big old bag on the shoulder or a backpack on your back. So leave those things in the car or at home when you're going to an interview. Arrive 10 minutes early. And I was talking to Amber and Jenna about this earlier. I am obsessive in the fact that I get there like an hour early, and that's not okay. We want to get there with about 10 minutes. If you get there too early, you might get there before the interviewer. If you get there late, it's not okay. That is a complete disrespect of the interviewer's time. So we want to make sure that we're about 10 minutes early, that we know where we're going, we are at the right spot, we know who we're there for, and we are good to go sitting in the waiting room for 10 minutes. That's the perfect amount of time. You'll see that I went ahead and switched to check-in communication. That is making sure you're in the right place, you know who you're there for, and that you've got all your stuff ready, you've got all your things, you're good to go. I like to talk about this because I've seen it on a firsthand example. I was working at the Texas Tech Career Center a few years ago, and we had interview days where a bunch of companies would come in and they would have interviewers, like companies there interviewing people. So we have this guy come in, and he is like huffing and puffing and breathing, and you could tell he was sweaty and he was hot, and he's like, I made it just in time for my interview. And his interview was at 9. He got there like 8:59. Scary. Anyway, so he's there. We're like, okay, great. Let me see what room you're in. So I look, and we find out he's actually in a building across campus. I don't know if you've ever been to Texas Tech campus or if you want to go. It's not small. It's at least a 15-minute walk to the engineering key where his interview was. So then he was at least going to be 15 minutes late because he didn't check his communication. So check, make sure you know where you're going. You've got the address plugged in somewhere. You know if you're taking the bus, where you'll need to walk to. All of this is planned either in advance or in the day of. Just make sure, recheck that you're all good to go. And then on the day of, during, just enjoy the conversation. You've done all of this prep work, you're ready to go, and we'll talk about handling the nerves in a little bit, because you're like, Tay, you didn't talk anything about the nerves. I'm like, I'm nervous here. We'll talk about it in just a second. But then you can just enjoy the conversation that you're gonna have. You've done all of your prep work and you're ready, and you can do it. So now we're gonna talk about after. So again, this is the whole process. So you've enjoyed the conversation, you're like, okay, I did it. Whew. Take a breath. As soon as you can, right? Either if it's on a bench waiting for the bus, or if you made it to your car, or wherever you are, take that Padfolio out and write exactly what you're thinking and you're feeling right then. And then use this later to assess how you did, right? Because everyone will be like, oh my gosh, how'd your interview go? Did you do well? What do you think about it? Then you can go back to those notes and think, okay, I did it. I did okay. Like, I feel good about it. And then at the end of your interview, make sure you ask for a business card. So then you can write a thank you note. Thank you notes go a long way. Just depending on, you can do a thank you email. Those are okay, but a handwritten note is awesome. So make sure you write a thank you note. All right. Last things. I'm hoping that y'all are throwing questions in that chat box because I'm ready for them after this last section. So final tips just for interviewing. Stay positive, right? So employers will try to get you to talk about negative things. They'll ask you about a time that you failed. They'll ask you if you've been let go from a job position before. They will ask you things that might not make you look great. So the way that we do this is we want to stay positive. If it was something that happened, turn it around for good. What did you learn? How are you different now, right? A key example of this is they'll say, tell me some of your weaknesses. And we don't want to pull a Michael Scott from The Office being like, I'm too trusting or I'm too hardworking. That's not what we want to answer. We want to be honest about things that we are working on. And that's the thing, you talk about your weaknesses, but I'm working on it in this way to make it better. We're staying positive. They might ask if you've been let go from a position before. So try to frame it in what you've learned. If you have, right? You might be like, well, I was let go because of this, but I've learned this now. And if they cry for negativity, turn it to the positive as much as you can. So try to keep it on the upside because you want to give them the best version of yourself that you can. Now we're going to talk about handling the nerves. Interviews come with a ton of nerves. I mean, if you look at this picture, this poor guy is like sweating. He's so nervous, right? And it can be nerve-wracking, right? It's the difference between you getting a job and then possibly not. Those are high stakes, right? It can be very nerve-wracking on how to get the interview. That's why we do presentations like this, to help decrease that uncertainty and to make sure that we can handle what's going to happen. So some tips for doing this and how to handle the nerves are scheduling. First, start off with scheduling the interview. The scheduling is up to the employer on when they have time, but if you can, right, this is an if you can, try to have it scheduled for whenever works best for you, if you can, right? Again, I'm putting that big if you can here. If you know you are going to overthink it all day and you're going to be freaked out all day, see if they can see you in the morning, right? Get in there and work on it do it in the morning. If you know you want lots of time to prep and you want that day to make sure that you can decompress, you make sure you're prepared, see if they can see you in the afternoon, right? Try to schedule the interview if you can, right? It's an if you can, but try to do it whenever it works best for your schedule. Next thing is exercise. Exercise and releases those endorphins, and those endorphins can make you happier, they can make you more positive, and they can help you have more confidence whenever you're going in. So even if it's just a quick walk around the block, or if it's something, exercise and then take a shower, right? Clean off everything, feel good, make sure you shower, do your hair, guys trim your beard or shave, whatever y'all do. Ladies, do your makeup where it's appropriate. You're not going too crazy, right? No crazy eyeshadows or crazy lipsticks, but natural. And you're making sure you're prepared, right? You've got those questions answered. You've got all of your documents. You're ready, right? You are ready to go. And that goes into dressing with confidence, that you've already got your outfit, it's picked out, it's prepared, and you feel confident in what you're wearing and you're ready. One of my favorite things to talk about in handling the nerves is something called a power pose. So a power pose is standing kind of like Superman or like Wonder Woman, right? You put your hands on your hips and you straight up sit there, or you stand for 2 minutes. 2 minutes straight. This is from a TED Talk. If y'all want to see it, I'll give you the link. But doing that, the power of what your body is doing actually influences the chemicals in your brain, and it makes you more confident. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not even going to try on what endorphins it helps, but it makes you more confident. Just that pose, you're ready, right? You're ready to take on the world with the power pose, and you are ready to do it. I used to teach public speaking, and I had my students do it before every single speech, and they said it helped. It's helpful. So be ready and give yourself time to relax. Take a deep breath. Right? Take a deep breath. You've got it. You've done all your prep work. You're ready. Knock it out of the park. You can do it, right? So handle those nerves. You can do it when you do all that prep work, and when you're ready, you've got it taken care of. It's like when you have a big test coming up here at AC, or, you have a big test. The more you study, it's like, okay, I've studied. I feel ready. I'm good to go. But if we don't study, it's like, oh my gosh. So we've got to study, and we've got to get ready before we do the interview. It's the same process. So make sure we're studying, we're preparing, we're ready to go. So give yourself some time to relax. You've done all the prep work. You've got it done. You can take care. You can do it. So last final tips, just kind of to wrap everything up, just different things we've talked about today. Dress for the occasion. Make sure you're ready to go. Reread the job description. Know what you're going in for. Research the company. Know what company you're applying for and what they stand for, and make sure it matches you. Review your resume. Check for typos. A career coach like me is also happy to do this with you, and to practice with a professional and practice that interview with somebody that you can, get feedback from before you even go into the interview. Prepare, prepare, prepare. And then, like I said, you've already prepared, so relax and that you can do this, and just enjoy the conversation to come. So let's go ahead and open up the floor for questions, or if you need a mock interview. Again, I went ahead and put our contact information here. We're taking appointments by video, phone, video conferencing, phone, and email. You can do this one on the right. On the left side, you'll also see our normal contact information, but the right is where we're taking appointments now. So, all right, I'm gonna open up the floor for questions.
We do have some questions in, Taylor, so
Ooh.
I will read some to you. One question asks, do employers normally contact your references?
That's a great question. So if you're giving them references, I would say yes, they're going to contact them. And if they're requesting references, then definitely. So if you're applying for jobs, then go ahead and give your references a heads up. Like, hey, I'm applying for jobs. You might be receiving an email or a phone call. This is the information I have for you. This is where they'll contact you. So give them a heads up so that way they can expect the phone call or the email. But yes, good question.
Makes sense. Okay, this one's a little long, but how do you handle when an interviewer asks about your current or previous employment, but it's not a positive work environment?
Okay, so the way that you can answer that, it kind of depends on a case-by-case situation. I'll be 100% honest with you, depending on what happened, right? So if it's current, you can just say, currently, I'm, in a position that doesn't use my strengths as much as I would like it to. That's why I'm applying and looking for something where I can be a better asset to a company, right? So it's kind of, we don't want to bash any companies, ever. Don't ever bash a past company because we don't want to burn bridges, right? Even if it's a negative experience or a toxic work environment, which I can tell you I've been in them, they're not fun. So, but we don't ever want to bash a company. And if they ask for like those negative examples, like we were talking about, try not to even mention the company it was at, because we don't want to burn those bridges and we don't want to get into that spiral of bashing on a company. That's not what we're here for. You're here in the interview to make yourself shine. That's the goal. So if you have a hard question where it's where you're like, just again, focusing on the job and what you're wanting to do now. And again, if you have a question that's like, you're like, well, I'm actually in this situation, give me an email, shoot me an email. I'd be happy to help you.
I think that's a great point. Also, that you never know how companies may be linked to one another or work with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And you could ruin your chances of getting a job by bashing a company that's a partner.
100%. And you don't know which companies are their partners unless you've done their research and it's on their website. And you could definitely shoot yourself in the foot if you start talking negatively about a company that they're friend, or say maybe say one of the interviewers' spouse works there. Mm-hmm. Like, and then it just can get real awkward real quick. So yes. No company mentioning, especially if it's negative. Yeah.
We got another question. How many references would be ideal to have?
Great question. I usually suggest 3 to 5 is a pretty good amount to have, depending on where you're applying, right? So some companies will want like 10, which is crazy. I know my husband applied at Pantex and they wanted, I think it was high. It was a lot of references and they couldn't be anyone you've ever worked with before, which was crazy, right? So it depends on what they're requesting. So definitely being real detail oriented and reading what kind of references they want and how many they want. So if they only want 3, give them 3. If they only want 5, give them 5, right? But paying attention to what they're asking for and being really detail oriented to give them what they request. But 5 is usually good to have on hand. Then you can kind of pick and choose whatever the employer or whoever you're applying for is needing.
Great. Some other questions, and I have a follow-up to this one. How do you ask an interviewer to clarify a question you don't understand?
Oh, I love that one. Yeah, that's a great question because sometimes that can happen. So say they ask that, you kind of give yourself a second to think usually and say, could you please rephrase that question in a different way? I mean, it's very prompt. It's polite. Just saying, can you please rephrase it in a different way? And they could say, oh, well, this is kind of what I'm asking here. It's like, okay, that makes sense. Or you can even ask, could you repeat the question, right? If you just need it to be repeated, that's always okay to ask. Just like, again, just saying please, being courteous, just like, can you please rephrase it? That's okay to ask.
That's good. So kind of my tag along with that question is, what is the best thing to do if you start answering an interview question and then forget what it is you're answering?
That can happen. So that's why I highly suggest framing the question, just because if you start off that sentence with repeating their question, it's a lot easier to remember. If you do forget, that means you're probably rambling. So good tip here is to stop and then think for a second and try to find the question. And if you need to, rethrow the question back in the middle of it. Like, so to sum up my answer to da-da-da-da-da-da, this is what da-da-da-da, finish, right? So if you think you're going to forget it, try to put the question back in the middle of the answer to make sure that you're answering the question, because we don't want to forget the question and then not answer it by accident. Yeah, great question.
Great. Another one we have is, what is a good question to ask when the interviewer asks you, do you have any questions?
I love this one. I get it all the time. So this is one of my favorites. So there's lots of different questions, right? I was saying try to prep 10. So anything that has to deal with the job that you don't know or the company you want to find out about. Some of my favorite go-tos are, what's the culture like on a daily basis in this company, right? So culture is something that you don't usually get from, you might can find out a little bit, right? So AC, we know it's the culture of caring just from our website, right? AC is pretty awesome that way. Other companies, you might not get that as much. So like I said, framing it with what you do know and asking them, how does the culture of the company play out on a daily basis? Some other fun ones I like are, what's your favorite part about your job? It's positive, it's about them. I mean, you've literally talked the whole time about yourself. Now we kind of get to turn it to them and say, what's your favorite part about your job? And then if they have them, awesome. You can take that info and say, okay, people do like their jobs here. If they don't, that's going to tell you a lot if they don't have a favorite part about their job. Because then you can be like, okay, they might not like their job. What does that say to me? Right? So asking yourself those questions. A good one that's always great to end with too is, what are our next steps? But that's like your last one. Make sure you have a couple before that. That's being like, when can I expect to hear back? Or what do we do next? Right? Or what's our next process here?
So would you advise to have questions ready to ask rather than them say, do you have anything for us? And you just say, nope.
No, cringy. Don't ever say no. That's why I'm saying prep questions, at least like 10, because they might answer some of the questions you have in the interview. So then you don't want to go ask those, because then they'll think you weren't paying attention. Mm-hmm. So have at least 10 prepped and ready. Please don't ever say no, because they're going to ask you at the end, what questions do you have for us? Have questions, please. If you don't have your, if you've tuned out, tune back in. Say yes, you have questions here. There's got to be something you want to know. A big question, I will say this to avoid, don't ever ask, what does a day look like in this job position? You should know. If you read the job description, you'll know. So that's not a question we want to ask, because it shows you didn't do your research and you didn't read the job description. So make sure you're asking things you really want to know, things that you are curious about. But those fun ones, like, what's your favorite part about your job, next steps, and culture of the company, are always some of my favorites.
Those are good. This question we got is a little fun. They want to know, what is the weirdest interview question you've heard?
The weirdest one? I heard of one saying how many ridges are on a quarter, which I thought was weird, because I'm like, how many ridges are on a quarter? And the answer they said to say was like, I don't know, but I'll find out for you.
God,
and I thought
that's
that was
one of those off the wall questions.
Mm-hmm, it was an off the wall one. The M&M one threw me. I was actually in an interview for that one, and I was kind of like, I'd be yellow, sure, right? Those are probably some of the weirdest ones I've heard.
Very good.
Those are the funny ones too. You always hear funny stories with the funky ones.
Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions submitted. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to send them in the chat or post them on the Q&A. Let's see. We'll see if any more roll in.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop my share. But if y'all do have questions or want a mock interview or want to meet with me, I'd be happy to. Again, right now we're doing all of our appointments through phone, video conferencing, or email. So that 806-414-8365 or employmentservices@actx.edu is the way to get in touch with us. And we have tons of cool resources on our website. So actx.edu/career is a great place to check it out too. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share.
All right, we have another question.
Awesome.
If you want to apply for a job, but just for the summer, how do you express that to an employer?
So I have lots of follow-up questions. So if it was a full-time position and they are looking for somebody full-time, that would be something you'd probably address either in your cover letter, or you would make sure that they knew that you would be going back to school, or you would have something else going on. If it's like a summer internship, it's known that you're going to go, that it's a summer time period, right? So it depends on what the job description says. But if they're looking for somebody to stick around, you would want to make sure that they know you're going to be doing other things in the summer. But again, that would hurt your chances of getting it. So make sure if you're looking for summer jobs that they are summer jobs, right? Or that your schedule might change in the fall if you want to stay. So for example, you want to go work at like Target for the summer and you're like, yeah, I can be full-time this summer or part-time. But making sure that they know, hey, in the fall, I will be attending school. And they should be able to understand that from your resume, because on your resume, you would have that you're in school with an expected graduation date. So if they know that expected graduation date is later, they understand you're still in classes. We would also discuss that in our cover letter, in our intro paragraph, saying that as of now, actually it'd probably be more in the second paragraph, because that's answering why you, like, as of now, I'm still in school, you know, looking for something during the summer. However, I think this would be a great opportunity.
Oh, we're getting some more questions, and yes, I think so. What do you do if you are in a group interview and it is implied that one of the people that is in the group is going to get the job?
I hate group interviews. They're so not my favorite, but they do happen pretty often, like doing group interviews. So somebody else is going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how competitive you are, honestly. So a person like me, I would say, great, that means it's not a good fit for me. Cool. Enjoy them. Have fun. However, if you're like, no, I think I'm still better for this, then we still want to be appropriate. We don't want to bash the other person ever. We want to talk about ourselves and talking about our accomplishments and how we fit the job description. We don't ever bash another person or another company. Again, kind of all about that positive cloud, right? All about the positivity. But making sure that if you think they're going to get it and you still really, really want it, look at what the interviewers are seeing in that person. And you're kind of like, well, I think I could also do well at this, right? Because of this is this. Sometimes in group interviews, it can get real competitive real fast, where people are trying to one-up each other. So we don't want to fall into that one-upping, but we do want to give concrete examples of our experience. So very concrete. Say, for example, in this position, when I did this, this is what qualifies me here. It's very factual, right? And it's hard to argue with facts. So, and again, sometimes it happens where we don't get the job. And that happens. And that's okay, because we want to, not only is the interviewer looking to see if, you know, you match the company, but you're also looking to see if you match the company, right? We're looking for a mutual agreement. And if they don't pick you, that's okay. It's nothing that you did wrong. Most likely. It could be. Usually not. But the interviewer most likely picked somebody that matched their company better.
Great answer.
Big question though. I like it.
One of our attendees put in one of the off-the-wall questions they've received before is, how do you fit an elephant in a refrigerator?
How do you?
And that the answer was, you get a big enough refrigerator.
Yeah. So I actually read that one, Carolee, that's funny, with all the emojis on there. Like, yeah, that's an off-the-wall one. And again, that they're looking for is just if you're creative. And to see what, they're seeing how well you respond to those kinds of things. Asking yourself, like, okay, if I had to fit an elephant in a refrigerator, yeah, you'd either get a really big refrigerator or you'd have to, like, figure something out or put its trunk in there. I don't know, right? Because of those ones, there's really no right answer. Like, it's just seeing if you're creative to come up with something, but that is a funny one. I haven't heard that one before.
It doesn't look like we have any more questions. If you have any other final thoughts or anything you want to put out there.
And again, if y'all have other webinar ideas, career or not career related, throw those in the chat box. So Amber was asking for those at the beginning. So if you joined in the middle, we're so glad you're here as well. But any webinar ideas that I could help with, or even just Student Life could do, Student Life is awesome. And they're trying to bring stuff even during the summer to y'all. So I will say that. There you go. I'll plug for y'all.
Thank you. Yes, we're getting some good jobs, some thank yous, some woohoos. So I think we're good. No more questions.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm so glad to be here today. It was fun.
Thank you so much, Taylor, again. And thank y'all everyone for being here.
Thank y'all so much. Y'all have a great day. Happy Wednesday.
Bye.